us now for this week's edition of The Public Square. I'm Wayne Shepherd, back from vacation, so I'm still kind of getting back into the action here, guys. So Dave Zanotti is here to help me out, of course, and Melanie Elsey and Rob Walgate and Alan C. Duncan and Jeff Sanders. You guys will carry me through this, right?
Yeah, we will. And sometimes when we like to leave you a little bit out of the information loop, knowing that you process so quickly and then immediately start asking the key questions that the listeners ask. Everybody's got a role on the panel here. Mm-hmm. So today we'll let you take that role.
Okay. All right.
Listener questions as we progress through some of the stuff, because we're going to go way behind the scenes today on how politics actually works leading up to an election. And it's not the story you probably thought.
Wait, let me get my notebook ready. This is going to be good, I think. All right, where do we start?
Well, let's start in the laboratory of democracy. All right. In truth, it's the laboratory of the republic. And the term laboratory of democracy is attributed to lots of people in the beginning, but the idea is that what happens in the states usually finds its way into becoming national and or federal policies. That the states watch each other, that they play off of each other, and that eventually the momentum of political movement in the states will move to the federal agenda. And what's important is if we were going to make this into a little railroad, people think that everything starts in Washington, D.C., and that is absolutely politically not true. And today I think will help illustrate that because the last stop on the train is Washington, D.C. So when we look for our leadership out of Washington, D.C., we're really falling into the trap of the game. And that's why so many people will get involved. Like G.K. Chesterton said, if you start an argument in the wrong place, you go mad. All right, and if you start in Washington, D.C., you'll probably burn out in 6 months because that's not where the train started.
Well, I'm just thinking you're talking about, the lab of the democracy or the lab of the republic. It also goes into what is the role of government. I think that'll be some of the conversation that we have today is what is the role of government and what types of laws should be instituted from government or the people.
It's a great question, and it is a historic question. We can go back to the work we've done in the state of Massachusetts, which takes you back to some of the most historic sites, whether they're church buildings or graveyards or halls, and in the study of not just the work that was done in Boston, but the work that was done in regards to the Massachusetts state constitution, which is the earliest in the republic. I think it might be the earliest, one of the earliest. And the concepts that then moved from that Massachusetts constitution to the Declaration of Independence. You could talk about Pennsylvania, another state that has strong in America, we're 250 years old, right? But it's ancient to us. The ancient American history that comes to us out of Pennsylvania.
Well, I'm thinking, we're such a young country, but it is the ancient to us, as you say. There was a gentleman that was in our office last year that talked to us about the business that he's a CEO of, and I think it goes back, 14 generations to the 1600s of their family in Europe, and we're like looking at each other like, just, whoa, this is kind of interesting to hear talk about. So, yeah, their business is older than our country.
So what you'll find, though, in all these situations, and we've had the privilege of working in the two states we just discussed, working in Ohio, working in Florida, working in Tennessee, working west of the Mississippi as well, on constitutional questions and issues as a public policy organization. Now, sometimes we've been slightly involved, sometimes we've been a careful observer, sometimes we've been very involved, and depending. So today we're going to turn to the laboratory of the state of Ohio, where the American Mission Center is in Valley City. And because you have to be somewhere for a headquarters, and we picked the Midwest because that's really where the Lord rose up this organization, helped us to rise up and to do this in a sense of obedience to Him. It's also the land that George Washington was thinking about in his will and much of his life, because he was here. He had land holdings here. He was hoping that the Western Reserve would be the pay land back for the troops that were not paid in money during the Revolutionary War. So Washington had his eye on this place, and particularly in the idea that there should be in the heart of the nation an institution established that would teach the first principles of American civil government so that our young people wouldn't have to go to Europe and learn ideas that don't work. They could be schooled in the doctrines of America. And so we're very proud to be in Valley City, Ohio, and to have 45 years of experience working in Ohio law. So this particular train is running through Ohio, but it's probably here first and coming to a train station near you. So let's start on the idea that coming up in 2026 in Ohio, it looks, in the election of 2026, in the November election of 2026, it looks like there's going to be 2 ballot issues. Melanie, Rob, what's coming on the table?
Well, a total maybe of 3 ballot issues, but 2 that we'll dive into today when it comes to pushes, I'll say pushes from the left. This is coming from the left. They're attempting to legally buy pieces of the Ohio Constitution.
And initially, the 2 ballot issues were presented as 1 ballot issue. Yes. The Ohio Ballot Board split it into 2 issues because we have a constitutional requirement that you have to have a single issue when you're focused on a constitutional amendment. So the more simplistic one would be to repeal a constitutional definition of marriage as being a union between one man and one woman, and changing that to requiring that the state of Ohio shall issue marriage licenses to individuals over the age of 18 and above without regard, treating equally all what they refer to as marriages, regardless of race, sex, or gender identity. The easiest piece to see in this is that this is going to provide the concept of marriage to all other types of relationships other than between one man and one woman, in addition to one man and one woman. What people may not catch in this language that struck me, individuals at the age of 18 and above, this will constitutionalize polygamy in addition to the other same-gender relationships. So that's one of the 2.
Well, yeah, and as Melanie mentioned, it lines out the constitutional amendment that was passed in 2004 that defines marriage can only be a union between one man and one woman. So instead of just lining that out and saying, hey, let's repeal that, they want to repeal and replace.
Right.
And the language they're using to replace, we've talked to lawyers around the state, some around the country, and they were quick to point out that it doesn't define it as only being 2 people. They said, right. Yes, you are correct. That is going to create a challenge, and it will be the subject of discussion in campaign commercials. Now, I'm sure many on the left would say, oh, that's ridiculous. No one would want it to be more than 2 people. Well,
how many times have I heard that before?
If that was the case, then why wouldn't you put that in there? Because you have everything else in there from regardless of race, sex, gender identity, all the things that you put in there. So wouldn't it be simple to put 2 more words, or 3 words, I guess, between 2 people or 2 individuals?
Isn't there a little bit more to that amendment?
There is. The entirety of the amendment says the state of Ohio shall issue marriage licenses to individuals the age of 18 and above and not nearer of kin than second cousins. In the state and its political subdivisions shall recognize and treat equally all marriages, regardless of race, sex, or gender identity. Religious organizations and members of clergy shall have the right to refuse to solemnize a marriage. This section is self-executing. So that would be the amendment that's the repeal and the replace. That language would replace the language passed in 2004.
Religious organizations not defined. And members of clergy, well, there's a lot of people who are people of faith who are not clergy, who are connected with all sorts of things around marriage, shall have the right to refuse to solemnize a marriage. That's an undefined term as well. This section is self-executing. So, in other words, they're trying to say you don't have to perform a marriage if you don't want to, because of conscience. But what about all the other questions of conscience? I'm suddenly listening to, in my mind, to Masterpiece Cake, that Colorado decision. And how many times have we now seen court decisions hitting us in regards to all the people that are around the wedding world and what are they allowed to do and not allowed to do? So again, the first point we should make is that these are items that belong in statutory conversations.
And it would reverse.
Not constitutional.
It would reverse the practice. And when it talks about political subdivision, you're talking about local jurisdictions issuing marriage licenses. And so it would, right now, those marriage licenses can only be issued to between one man and one woman. So you would have people of faith who are working in those offices who would then be required to put their stamp on marriages that are not between men.
Well, let's put this in context also in regards to what the Supreme Court has done. In the Obergefell case, which is the accumulation and the end train stop of really what began in 2008 in Lawrence v. Texas. Somebody check me to make sure I got the date right. 04?
I believe 04.
Okay. All right. In Lawrence v.
03,
Texas.
Melanie just corrected me. 03. I'm sorry.
Lawrence is 03.
Did I have it right? No, I had it in 08. So now we're back. Thank you, Melanie. All right, 03.
This is why we're a panel discussion.
Yes,
Someone
thank God.
will get it right.
So we go back to 03 with Lawrence v. Texas, which then concludes in Obergefell. The court has made a series of systematic steps in which they have basically said they're going to get rid of marriage. Now, Scalia watched the whole thing before he died and said, this is where it's all going. And just as he said, that's where it went. It took them steps because they knew they were basically taking over the political debate, taking it from the people, and they were going to do it their way. And so they succeeded in doing so. So right now, it's a free-for-all. After Obergefell, there's no need for a constitutional amendment anywhere because Obergefell overrules, the court has overruled all state laws in the same way that they did Roe versus Wade. So there's no discrimination going on right now in any state. We're under the fiat of the Supreme Court. Evidently, the folks in the LGBTQ community are convinced that the court that we have right now is very likely to rediscover Scalia's arguments, see that he was exactly right in creating a total free-for-all in this environment, which is out of touch with where the country is and certainly out of touch with the Constitution, and that people are getting hurt by the Obergefell decision in regards to freedom of religion, freedom of expression, free speech, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got all kinds of challenges here. They must believe that they're about to lose Obergefell, and this is an attempt to stop that.
Wow, we're off and running today on the Public Square. But wait, there's more, as they often say, so you stay with us right here on the Public Square.
We will be right back for more on the Public Square. Let's see, there's our tithe, food and clothing budget, taxes, all the insurance, and the car payments. Where's the line in your budget that helps pay the bill for fixing what's wrong in America? Log on today at aproundtable.org and join the growing team that's giving every month to get America back on track. Make your monthly contribution to aproundtable.org. Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
So on the Public Square, we're exploring some ballot issues coming up in the state of Ohio, which, as Dave said earlier, probably coming to a state near you very soon. I do have my first question, though, Professor,
yes,
and that is, or maybe it's not so much a question as if you would state more clearly, why does this, what they're proposing here, why does it belong in statutory law rather than the constitutional amendment?
Because the question of marriage as a fundamental definition has never had to be in the Constitution because it's been understood, based on 4,000 years of history, that marriage is, in fact, between a man and a woman. Okay, now they don't want that to be any longer the practice, and they could just as easily propose a statute that says marriage is the following, and the following people will be able to have the following rights. This could be done in statutory, and the reason that statutory law would be more important is because they could, first off, they could do a ballot issue. Take it in Ohio, they have the right of being able to do an initiated statute. They could go to the legislature and say, we want to expand the benefits of marriage in these ways, pass a law that would do so. And it would suffice to get the job done. Now, the legislature would reject it, under its current makeup, and then the same petitioners could come back and take it to the people and have a referendum, and the people could decide whether or not they want to change the law and make that expansion. Let's say that the measure then passed and the expansion was law, it would remain in the arena of debate as long as the people wanted it to. In other words, every year the legislature could revisit that question and ask, is it working, is it not? Did we get it right, did we not? Did we make that definition correct or not? Like this question of polygamy. So if they passed it and then suddenly they began to see that polyamorous and polygamy was coming together into an arena of people applying for marriage license, they could say, wait, we make a little change here. Okay, it keeps the issue open to political debate, open to the legislature, open to the people. When you lock it, or what they like to do is enshrine it in the Constitution.
That's the word, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, you raise the threshold to such a level that you basically now own all the decisions based upon the 5 people who presented this petition in their language, and then the signatories who took it to the state.
And we talk about the language being repealed from the 2004 amendment that was passed. Well, that language is still in the Ohio Constitution, but it's not being enforced either,
right,
because of Obergefell that you mentioned. So the question I think some would become is, well, was that language needed in the year 2004? Was that needed to be put in there because you just had Defense of Marriage Act passed by Congress? You had all the states moving in one direction. Why was that language done in the first place?
Now, that's a much more controversial question than some people might realize. And it's a very logical question and a very fair question. There was strong debate in Ohio about, since the statute in Ohio had passed the Defense of Marriage Act, after successfully passing such a statute, why would you move to a constitutional amendment to take it further if you already had what you wanted in statutory law? What happened was that a lot of supporters thought that this would be a very good issue to get on the ballot to use as a wedge that would help George W. Bush get elected.
I thought only the left used wedge issues for their political gain.
No, I heard and read the conversations, and the Ohio media was onto it and published stories about the fact that this was being promoted by certain pro-family people because they thought it would net the result of turnout that would get George W. Bush elected. So, as my friend Michael DiGiorno would say on your morning show, it's a goose and gander situation. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. In other words, my Uncle Tony would have said, the worms are going to turn. If you use a practice that is a political tool against your opponents, watch out when they turn around and use it back against you. And that's what we really have right now, is a wedge fight. But before we take that too far into 2026, we started on the easy amendment.
Yes, we did.
Really?
Let's go to the second one, and then we'll come back to the wedge issue.
Oh,
Melanie?
And by the way, are these both going to be, is it determined they're going to be on the ballot?
Excellent question, Wayne. I'll make it short order. We can come back to it. But the answer is yes. And as we get through the rest of the conversation about the importance of the election, you realize,
okay,
let me just quantify this. To get the petition signed in Ohio will cost about $2 million. We've done it multiple times. We've been involved in petition campaigns in the state of Ohio with petition circulation. We've been involved in other states also. $2 million is really the cost of a good media buy in a Senate electoral campaign. $2 million spent on petitions will give you about 500,000 names that you can organize in election time for voter turnout. And it also gives you an endless potential to bring in billions of dollars from around the world to back this ballot issue. And those dollars are out there. And stay tuned. There'll be more on that in just a second.
The Second Amendment, yeah.
So the Second Amendment is offered by the same individuals as the repeal of the definition of marriage and repeal and replace. But this Second Amendment is seeking to secure equality of rights for individuals based on the civil rights categories of race, color, creed, religion, but they're adding in sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, regardless of sex assigned at birth, pregnancy status, genetic information, disease status, age, disability, recovery status, familial status, ancestry, national origin, military or veteran status. So that's a lot of categories. It would even include because
20 categories.
Because of the categories of ancestry or national origin, that would include illegal aliens, for example. It would include all of the temporary, less permanent gender changes that people are seeking through medical transitions and whatnot. So it expands. It's not, sexual orientation is different from gender expression. Gender expression is, I feel like I'm this way for a day. I feel like I'm a different way for the next day. It's not, it's very fluid. And it binds this prohibition on discrimination based on equality of rights, not just to the state of Ohio, but to the political subdivisions. So you're going to have
every city, every town, every township,
districts.
Every school district. Right.
Right. You wouldn't be able to discriminate based on any of these categories. Wow. Right.
So if I'm going to use air quotes here. So if I misgender someone, okay, what does that say? Can I be penalized if I say that a guy is a girl or a girl is a guy?
Well, you are not the state of Ohio, and you are not a political subdivision, right?
Oh, okay, right. Correct.
So you still have freedom of speech.
Oh, I'm so glad.
However, if you initiate an action based upon that situation, then you are in violation. Now, let's make this very clear. This particular part of the amendment is going into Article 1 of the Constitution of the state of Ohio, which is the Bill of Rights.
Correct. And it's being applied to 7 different categories.
Wait, so is the word discrimination defined?
It's abridging or denying the rights of individuals as those rights apply in education, employment, housing, healthcare services, health insurance, public spaces and accommodations, that's bathrooms, state records, legal identification. So, if I'm renting a house, I couldn't say no to someone who is practicing a lifestyle that I might disagree with.
So what about education? So can a Christian school forbid someone not hire them because they disagree with their lifestyle?
There is no religious exemption in this amendment.
No religious exemption.
How about
that? Private schools are not political subdivisions, but they are under the laws of the state of Ohio.
Exactly.
So private Christian schools, Jewish schools, any religious-based education institution would not be able to deny employment, for example, to someone who practices a lifestyle that is in violation of their religious creed.
Now, for everyone listening, we are going to place this full language of this amendment. It's on one page. It's not a super big read, though it does exhaust you very quickly because there are 2 sections, A and B. Then there's a subsection under B, and then there's a C, D, and E, which don't make all that much difference. But they do. They all do. Every word counts in the Constitution. It's too big to be a constitutional amendment to start with, but it's there, so we'll have it. We'll have it for you.
In that long list of people mentioned in that, was age one of the things listed?
Yes.
So a child,
yes,
could be included in this.
Yes.
Well, I think that's
because it's in the Bill of Rights.
Yes, and this amendment would then go crashing into the amendment we read first. Because of the issue of marriage, they're trying to say 18. Well, they can point at this amendment and say, wait a minute here. I don't have to be 18.
Because I'm being discriminated against.
Could a child then request gender reassignment surgery? And could they just get that?
Absolutely. But we also have that language, that question, that context that you're using previously a past amendment on healthcare freedom. That also applies into that space. The other thing that I thought was interesting was recovery status. So this will prevent
big
people.
Set of words.
That will prevent people from saying, "No, I'm not going to hire you because you're a drug addict. You're in process of recovering from a heroin addiction. I'm going to wait, and I don't want to hire you."
A lot more gambling addictions that are going to come to the surface.
Well, I said to Rob, this is where you could have somebody that's coming out of gambling therapy who decides to take an application as an accountant, a senior accountant in a church, and they can't say no. All right, you know, it's just bad. Look, we just don't think that should be where you ought to be.
What about somebody who had issues with children and they want to come work in a church nursery?
What about
or they
people
want to work
who
at a daycare?
Yeah, they're adults, but they self-identify as a child, and you have to let me in.
Okay, so let's go back.
I mean,
now.
there's a lot of
I know
mental
we're pushing,
illness.
A lot of crazy
we're pushing them to the
categories in
extremes.
No,
but,
we're not even
but
to the
they're-
extremes.
They're
All right.
real things.
All right, we're not even to the extremes, but I'm going to go back up to Article 1, Section A in just a second. Wayne, we're going to take this a little bit farther.
All right. We'll get to the whatabouts coming up on the Public Square. Dave mentioned this language. It'll be on our websites, thepublicsquare.com and aproundtable.org.
We'll be right back for more on the Public Square. Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
You guys are not making it easy to ease back into the schedule after a vacation here. You're jumping right in on some really
you
tough
were away.
issues.
That's
Wow,
what we do.
this is not a pretty picture we're painting here today of what's ahead, not only for Ohio but for other states around the country. So let's pick it up.
Wayne, that's the point. The proponents of this are not doing this in a vacuum. This is not an Ohio-baked cake. This is something that's being baked at the national level, and it's being implanted into Ohio for a number of reasons. First is what happened in 2023 when Ohio passed one of the most radical abortion language proposals ever into their state constitution, and that was done with a huge amount of international and national money from Planned Parenthood and their regime. It's almost like the LGBT community and the abortion community worked together to get this amendment passed in an off election year and to bamboozle the people of Ohio. And they did a great job in their campaign to do so. And they won, and so they figured, well, we did it once, we can do it again. So it's almost like one side of the coalition got what they wanted in 2023. Now the next side's coming back to get it in 2026. Put a pin in that. We'll be back to it in a second. Let's go back up to the actual language of the amendment so we don't get lost. Because when we start to work out the ramifications, we forget what the purpose is. The purpose is equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the state of Ohio or its political subdivisions on account of. Okay, before you get to the list of 20 people, equality of rights shall not be denied or abridged by the state of Ohio or its political subdivisions. Now, this is in Article 1, the Bill of Rights. If we go to Article 1, Section 1, the Ohio Constitution reads, all men are by nature free and independent and have certain inalienable rights, among which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and seeking and obtaining happiness and safety. That is all people. Not 20 subdivisions of people, it's all people. What the people who put this petition together want is already in the Constitution. They have to make their case that what they want falls under the language of seeking and obtaining happiness and safety, or defending life and liberty, or acquiring and possessing property, and you could make the case you're making under the existing language of the Constitution without 20 subdivisions.
But in the language that we have that's existing, you can't crash into the rights of somebody else. So what they're doing with this new amendment is they are securing a preferential right of these 20 categories over and above the all that's existing.
Which goes against the Ohio Constitution to begin with,
Yes,
where
it
you
does.
basically can't have special privileges.
Yes,
Right.
that's also in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
That you cannot create a circumstance of special privileges for one group of people. Let's see. It says in Article 2, Item 2, Article 1, Section 2, and no special privileges or immunities shall ever be granted that may not be altered, revoked, or repealed by the General Assembly. They're saying,
And the General Assembly cannot revoke these because
it's the Constitution.
It's the Constitution. It has to be a vote of the people.
All right. And so you've got a situation where, once again, the very legal strategy is so far above the fray, so far above the actual issue. These are people who are using state constitutions to deconstruct the rule of law in our representative republic to create their own zones inside the Constitution to operate and manipulate public policy by doing things that are the people who wrote these documents would have said, get out of here. On process, before you even get to the 20 categories.
How would the people who wrote these documents define happiness in and of itself? I think sometimes in our modern world, maybe we don't view the word happiness the way that the original folks meant it.
It has to be your acceptance of my lifestyle choice. That's how I define happy. I'm not happy until you're bowing down.
Today.
That's today, not the original.
Alan's asking the question, the original, you know what the original would be? Whatever you want under the rule of law.
Okay.
In other words, whatever if you want to do the craziest, zaniest stuff in the world, if there's no law that says you can't, you can. And if there's a law that says you can challenge it based on your happiness, not based upon your identity.
Right, but the philosophical view of happiness, the ancient view,
different than
was
ours.
Typically connected with virtue and aligning oneself
Today,
with the
without
true
a doubt.
and the good and the beautiful.
Today it's connected to hedonism.
Yeah.
Right.
But even connected to hedonism, the Constitution still works.
The Constitution says your rights at the tip of my nose.
Yeah.
So long as you're not doing any violence to me.
But that being a significantly different question. All right, on the how does it crash with others? Now, we're going to get there.
Well, and as I read the amendment that's being proposed, the phrase that jumped at me, and I'm like, and I yield to you, Dave and Melanie, you guys have been studying and doing this, but disease status. When people were sitting behind closed doors, what made them say, you know what, putting disease status
AIDS.
is a good idea? Oh, no, I understand. I understand
Syphilis,
the premise
gonorrhea.
of it, but at what point did they think, yes, that's gonna turn people or encourage people? We've learned so much
Because their
since
whole
the
marketing
80s.
campaign is going to be based on fairness. So they threw in a lot of different categories in here that they could say is based on fairness. And to your point about the application of it today compared to the original language, the last section of this states that this whole section, Section 23 of Article 1, shall be liberally construed in favor of its purpose.
Can you believe putting that in the Constitution? Can you believe putting that language, like you're instructing the courts already?
Yeah,
What if I had COVID in 2020? Could I be discriminated for my disease status then?
I mean, maybe, but I feel like when I read this, I mean, what about the guy that has 7 drunk driving convictions? Aren't you discriminating against him?
And he
if you
applies
appeal
for a
his
job
license?
to be a truck driver.
Yeah, how you can't discriminate against
Well,
him.
he's got a disability. He's an
Though
alcoholic.
now he's got 2 going for him.
Yeah,
He's got
yeah.
2 reasons you can't deny him the job.
I mean, like when you read this and say, wait a minute, what are we doing? And
You see how one-sided this is.
and it becomes emotional because all the commercials, everything you see is going to
That's
be.
why disease status is in there. You're going to see a commercial about an AIDS victim.
Yeah, and they're going to prey
Yes.
on people's emotions.
Right. Did you know Ohio law is so unfair to people with diseases? And boom, here comes the
But
commercial.
they won't be, dare I say this, they won't be true examples.
No.
We've
No,
seen that
no,
in past
in
campaigns.
2023,
It's not going to be truth telling.
They lied in
Yeah.
2023. And by the way, the reporters who I know are watching and listening to what we're doing right now, we still contend that campaign, Beth and Kyle, that ran the state under the 20 was a lie.
They had a real tragedy.
Yes.
But the way it was
portrayed was not
true.
honest. And their tragedy was real and everyone feels for them and that they lost a child. But the way it was portrayed in the media was never investigated, fact-checked. It was a lie.
You know, I am normally an optimist. But
After what we've lived through?
You
Yeah.
know what's coming now. So after 2023, though, I shook my head because whenever you're going to put a large bill like this in front of people, and it has a lot of words, now I believe people's eyes glaze over, and they stop thinking and they just say, yeah, okay, whatever, and they'll vote for it. That was our experience in
Based
2023.
on the TV commercial that they saw.
Yeah.
Another interesting thought is that on the concept of you can't discriminate based on disease status, and we know there's no age limit in this, so it applies to children. We've had sections of the country that have had a measles outbreak. So you cannot prevent, schools are political subdivisions. The health departments will not be able to isolate children or quarantine anybody based on the fact that they would be violating their rights on disease status.
All right, for those of you that are just joining, here's one section of this new amendment coming to a train stop near you. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the state of Ohio or its political subdivisions on account of, here's the list of 20, no discrimination based on account of race, color, creed, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, regardless of sex assigned at birth, pregnancy status, genetic information, disease status, age, disability, recovery status, familial status, ancestry, national origin, or military and veteran status. Wayne, I asked a very senior political figure in the state of Ohio to consider that, and he said, well, then who's left to discriminate against?
Yeah. We need to take a break. I think God must laugh when he hears sex assigned at birth, though, and that's too much. All right, we're going to come back. Perhaps you've been trying to take notes. This is one of those programs you're going to have to go back and listen again to absorb it all, I believe. ThePublicSquare.com.
We will be right back for more on The Public Square. Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to The Public Square.
On The Public Square today, we're talking about some ballot issues that are likely to pop up in Ohio, and we think they're going to be in your state too, probably before very long. So it's very helpful to have this discussion here today with the panel. Dave?
Wayne, regardless of where you are on the 20 subdivisions of this new creation of personhood in the state of Ohio based on these 20 factors, we can fight this completely on process. There's already amendment. Section 1, Article 1, Bill of Rights, that says everybody in this state of Ohio are by nature free and independent and have certain inalienable rights. They can make the case for what they're after within the realm of statutory law inside the constitutional protection that we all have in the state of Ohio right now. So it is not a necessary movement. So the first thing in regards to medicine is do no harm. I believe the first thing in regards to writing law should be do no harm. So to get what they want, they're willing to place everything else in the balance. The second section, Article B of the new proposed amendment, says the state of Ohio and its political subdivisions. The first one says you shall not do the following, shall be denied or abridged. State of Ohio and its political subdivisions shall not enact or enforce any law, statute, or regulation. All right, so now they're paralyzing the whole system that abridges or denies the rights of individuals on account of race, color, creed, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, regardless of sex assigned at birth, pregnancy status, genetic information, disease status, age, disability, recovery status, familial status, ancestry, national origin, or military and veteran status. This includes but is not limited to the rights of the individuals in. Notice, these are categorizations aligned to these words, which makes them individuals with rights. And in the practice of what the state and all of its subdivisions do in regards to passing everyday laws, you cannot discriminate in the realm of education, employment, housing, healthcare services and health insurance, public spaces and accommodations, state records and legal identification. Now, friends, we could spend a whole nother hour just on that list. So you have 20 new creations of what it means to be an individual and 7 specific places where we are specifically saying you cannot not give these people who are wanting what they're wanting in these 20 categories, whatever they want in these arenas, or else you will be subject to discrimination against their civil rights.
Is the Ohio State University a political subdivision of the state of Ohio?
Yes.
How can they deny anyone
Access.
acceptance
Yeah.
to the university?
Oh, good.
What's the acceptance
Hooray.
rate there? It's a small number. I mean, it's gotten to be where it's tough to get in. How can you say no?
That's why saying no to someone can't be the definition of discrimination. It's too broad. It's too far.
But when is the generation today hear the word no? I'll never forget, we talk about it when we've done some shows on other issues. And
Well, that's not their fault.
This
If they don't hear no, it's not their
My
fault.
kids heard it every day.
right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times in these spaces where kids are, that's why we have some of the issues we have with, we're talking
This
about.
generation's not writing the language, though.
But hang on, no.
correct.
Well, let's put it. Ohio State University can deny anybody access based on academics.
If they have a learning disability, can you?
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah, man. I didn't
I
think
mean,
of that.
I'm
I
just
did
thinking
not
there's
think
always
of
going to
that.
be an angle. You read off 20, then we looked at the 7
So
underneath.
yes, they can, but then you can turn around and sue them saying that they did it based on your learning disability.
What if I'm an
That's a
alcoholic?
conundrum.
What if I'm an alcoholic?
Yeah, there's your
And I have a
disability.
1.7 in high school. Well, that's my recovery status. Well, I would have a 4.0, but
Wouldn't this codify also drag
This
queen
is why he belongs
teachers
in the public policy
In preschool.
business.
in preschool? Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's not just in libraries. Now your children's preschool
In
teachers
education,
can
it
be
does
drag
clearly.
queens
We have
every
to make
day.
one more fine point. Shall not enact or enforce. That wipes out all the laws on the books because all the laws in the books that we have can't be enforced. They can't enact new
Now,
laws.
that's technically speaking, in essence, yes, you're correct. They could pick any place to make the case. It doesn't mean that suddenly all laws in the books are paralyzed in the state of Ohio. It means if this comes into reaction, they all
crash
come
into this, they
under
can't be
this.
enforced.
Right.
Right.
They all come under this. That's why it belongs in statute and not in constitutional law. The debate's in the wrong place.
Well, don't they have to prove that people are being horrendously discriminated against already? Like, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Are people
fair
being
question? How many cases are currently in the courts that fit into this? Where is where's the grievance that is substantive to make a measure that is this exhaustive? Or now we have to turn the corner. Or in truth, is this really another agenda?
Well,
Now,
I think so. Yeah.
Because we've seen it in 2023 and we saw the abortion wave go across the country post Dobbs, and we saw how they have certain states, because there is ballot access, that the coalition between the LGBT community and the abortion community has the capacity to raise billions of dollars and manipulate state elections. This is what this is about. This is not just a wedge issue. This is a wedge issue on steroids.
And we're supposed to be celebrating the 250th anniversary of the country
in 2026.
in 2026.
Instead, we're deconstructing what it means to be a country.
I think an analogy can be, I think you can compare this to the concept of open borders, where the intent of the open borders philosophy was to flood and create chaos. This is going to flood and create chaos on a different arena, but it will do the same thing as what was accomplished with open borders.
And the people behind this see that as a tool. So that's their agenda, but it's a bigger agenda. To get the money that they need to make this happen, they will have to go ahead and prove that there's an immediate benefit. The immediate benefit is simple. When this amendment reached a point of they had some trouble with their original language, they split the issues because the ballot issue said to them, they reapplied with the Secretary of State. The day that the Secretary of State came back and said the language is sufficient to be placed on the ballot if you can get the signatures. The very same day at 11 in the 11 o'clock hour that this declaration was made by the Secretary of State, within a few hours after that, Sherrod Brown, Democrat from Ohio, who had recently been defeated in 2024 by Bernie Moreno, Republican, declared he was running for the United States Senate in 2026 against John Husted, former Speaker of the House, who was appointed to take J.D. Vance's seat. In other words, Husted, who now is filling in J.D. Vance's seat, has to run again quickly by law because he was appointed. And Sherrod Brown's saying, I want my seat back. And so he's coming back after. And is it coincidence that you're announcing one of the most contentious Senate campaigns in the country that could hang the balance completely in regards to which party controls, and you do it just hours after this amendment is certified for circulation?
2026, Ohio has United States Senate race as well as all statewide offices up, as well as all 99.
And an open seat for the governor's race.
Open seat for the governor's race. So it's going to be contentious in the state of Ohio.
This could be the best wedge issue they've ever seen. I mean, look at the volume of things that they have the opportunity. And again, this is the behind-the-scenes reality, folks. Remember about the train stops. You don't change the balance in the U.S. Senate starting in Washington, D.C. You start in a state where no one thinks you've got a chance, and you find a chink in the armor.
We need to take a break, unfortunately, in this point in the conversation. But if you have to leave us at this time, the rest of this will be heard on our YouTube channel and also at thepublicsquare.com. You must listen as we talk about what do we do, whether we live in Ohio, whether we don't. How do we stand on guard against these things? Coming up on The Public Square. All right, let's continue the conversation now, talking about these ballot issues that are likely to be faced in Ohio that affect perhaps your state as well. Rob, you were going to make a comment?
Well, it's just interesting to me, the Senate race we talked about between John Husted and Sherrod Brown, which will be most likely the primary winners of each respective party, they're going to run against each other in 2026. As Dave mentioned, that's J.D. Vance's seat. Well, that comes up for election in 2028. This is the election to fill the unexpired term that J.D. Vance won in 2022. So they're going to have to run twice in 2 years for the seat. So this wedge issue is going to impact what will happen moving forward. And you have one guy running, Sherrod Brown. I believe he started his political service in 1974.
Yeah, he's 72 years old.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So other than a 2-year absence where he was defeated recently and then 2 years in the middle of that, he's been in public service like 48 years.
Well, and he's got one of the most magic names in the state of Ohio, Brown. All right, whether you're talking about the Cleveland Browns, talking about Paul Brown, and there have been a number Jim Brown. There's been a number of very successful politicians that have had the name Brown. So he starts with 100% name identification, and his name is good, so to speak. Now, if Sherrod Brown was sitting right here, we'd love to have him at the table because he's a very affable man. We've had wonderful conversations with him over the years. We happen to disagree on just about everything, but we do not consider him an enemy. Would you say you're calling him a political opportunist in the moment? Yes, so. And I'd say that if he was sitting right at the room. Explain to me how you're connected to this. And of course, probably the Brown campaign would say, we don't know what you're talking about. Oh, okay, so let's talk about how does the wedge issue work. Here's how it works. You go out and you get 500,000 signatures, you organize all those signatures, and now they're your property. You've got all the identifying information with them, and now you have a 500,000 person database list to start your campaign. You ask yourself, how many people would vote for this if you could just spin a good enough tale? Well, 2023 is the answer. You get one good emotional commercial, you'd spend millions and millions of dollars putting it everywhere, and people go sympathetically to the polls saying, oh, I didn't know we were hurting people, and I don't want to hurt people, so I vote for this. That's how you do it.
And we're giving more rights. Who wants to be called a bigot?
Exactly. So you isolate the issue, you find the heartstring. They're paying money right now for polling. I'll guarantee you to find the heartstring issue. They'll build it. They've got 20 different people groups to start with. All right. No one's going to ask the question of how did personhood become my disability? I thought I was more than that. How did personhood become my gender? I thought I was more than that. See, they're falling right into the trap. Then what you do is you've got your story, you go out and you promote it, and then you selectively use all that energy to get a 3-point voter turnout. and you target the audiences that are going to listen to this the most. And usually it's college campuses. In Ohio, the most volatile place to stir up voter turnout is Ohio State University, Ohio University, and all the other universities and colleges across the state. They go out, and if they can get a 3% swing of the vote in Ohio, they can get Sherrod Brown elected. Wait a minute, Ohio's a red state. No, it's not. Ohio has a history of splitting their Senate seats that goes back generations. This is a very different state than people think it is from the outside looking in.
And I mean, the fact is, as Ohioans, we have the ability and the right to alter and change our state constitution. I mean, there's other places around the country that are at the behest of legislative bodies, and they don't have a say in what they do.
Next door neighbor, Pennsylvania, is one of the toughest places that change your constitution at all.
They can't get laws passed that they want passed. So some people look at it and say, well, that's a problem that you can change your constitution. We say—
So I'm making this clear enough, Rob, that we're saying that the money comes in, the ballot issue takes over the election, the turnout numbers change because of it, and they win a razor-sharp victory with a Democrat winning the election over the Republican, and that gives them one more seat to flip the Senate. That's the real game plan
the
here.
strategy.
And I think you'll see them also do that try and do that in the governor's office as well, because you have an open seat, you have a relative newcomer that the GOP has endorsed in Vivek Ramaswamy. His opponent most likely will be Tim Ryan, congressman from the state of Ohio, who has done nothing, in my opinion, except for move closer to the middle over the past years that he's been out of office. He's moving to the middle. He's making a lot of money in the private sector. But if he runs for governor, he's going to have a shot. And then the Republicans in the state of Ohio will be a bit stuck because they've made the governor's seat or the governor's mansion a place where they just appoint people to make the laws. So we could have a bigger problem than we thought.
One more critical point of the strategy. You do it in Ohio, and then in 2028, you can kick it out and do it in every other state that has ballot issues, at least 14 other states. And somewhere in there, you'll get the flips that you need to get control of the Senate again. I'm telling you, we've been at this for our whole lifetimes. We've watched people do this on both sides. We've sat in seminars and listened to them tell us what they're trying to do. We've watched it with our own eyes. We've seen hundreds of millions of dollars spent. This is coming to a train stop near you. This is the laboratory. It's in the state of Ohio. It's where the American Mission Center is. We're seeing it firsthand, and we're sounding the alarm to the nation. The train's rolling.
And no matter where you are in the country, if someone comes up to you and they have a petition and ask you to sign it, ask a few questions. Don't fall for the 10-second spiel on what you're actually signing. Take a look at the language. Ask a question or two. What does this word mean? What does that word mean? Why? I don't understand. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
What I would suggest is if someone's asking you to change your Constitution, to me, it seems the logical thing is, do you have a copy of that language? I'll take it home and I'll read it, and then I'll contact you and sign.
There you go.
If I agree. Let me take my time to research this before I put my name on anything. Well, this is just going to place it on the ballot to give people a vote. Hey, whoa, time out. How much money are you going to spend on that campaign? I don't want to contribute to anything with my name until I truly know what it is.
I want to bring up something else that was very clear and plain to me in 2023, is that way too many pastors of churches will not educate their congregations on these things, these ballot initiatives that will harm my neighbor, that will harm society. Am I not obligated by God to love my neighbor and to warn them about bad things that would come? And so I talked to my pastor at that time, and I explained to him the whole ballot initiative in 2023 about abortion. He was very alarmed, and I said, here's some information from the American. It is completely legal for you to talk about this from the pulpit. Oh, we will put that as a link in an email right before I go on vacation. And so it went in a link in an email that nobody read. And there were people in that congregation who I'm not saying that they were stupid people, but they were ignorant of what was going on, and they voted for that ballot initiative.
Now, I can tell you a contrary story in Florida.
Okay.
All right. We were invited in by pastors in Florida to speak on with the pastor in the pulpit on Sunday morning and hold a seminar immediately after the service. And Florida had the successor amendment in 2024 that Ohio passed. They took it right out. See, folks, we're not lying to you. They did it in Ohio in 2023. They took it straight to Florida on the abortion amendment in 2024. And we had a chance, as did many other organizations, to work with pastors who literally brought this out, laid the language out and said, friends, this is not what the Bible teaches. It's not what we believe. You have the right of conscience to do what you want, but we're going to tell you why we think this is a true question for a moral people. And that measure was defeated in Florida. It was a huge defeat for the abortion industry.
The stuff is not off limits to God's people to talk about, even from the pulpit or the Sunday school classroom.
Quickly, what do? Please stay tuned. We're going to talk about this again in the coming weeks. Get a copy of the language. It's available at the website, right, Rob? We got it there at thepublicsquare.com?
Yes, the language from the Secretary of State's site.
And we'll give you an announcement, particularly reporters that are listening right now to go back and report to the other side. Guess what? See the Language is back in business. We'll have this See the Language. We got our markups right here. We're going right back. 4 million people viewed that site in 2023. The fight is on. The train, maybe it'll stop here.
The alarm has been raised. What are we going to do? Stay with us on the Public Square. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.